I want to jog your memory a little bit. Can I take you back to about 1918? You remember that, don't you? The end of World War I. They decided to have a painting competition. So they were asking artists to submit their works based on the theme peace. When they finally got to the finals, there were 2 paintings that were left that had been chosen as the finalists. The first painting was a lovely pastoral scene. You can imagine sheep or something, grass and green and beautiful and motionless, like a moment frozen in time. I'm sure it was quite beautiful. It reminds me of a painting my grandmother bought at auction one time. Oh, it was good size. Ended up over her fireplace in the living room, and she was so proud of that thing. It had a real deep shadow box frame, and it was done by a known artist. And I have to say, it was beautiful. It was a pastoral scene, absolutely still and gorgeous. Now, the other finalist was very different. It was the scene of a mother bird feeding her young. Even while the waterfall right near them roared loudly, and wind blew, and lightning was in the sky. Which painting do you think won? In motionless and stillness and is that really peace to us, or is it being centered and calm no matter what goes on around? When I think of Jesus in his life, can you imagine that evening before the crucifixion? If you go back to read the gospel at that point, you will see that he was steeped in peace. He had, we used to say, enough to share and enough to spare, but in this case, he had peace to share and to spare. In spite of what he was looking at, what seemed to be going to happen around him, he was in a state of absolute peace. It's what's going on inside. That inner serenity, which allows us to carry on and handle responsibilities according to our nature, no matter what seems to be happening around us. I've had moments in my life where the waterfall was making a lot of noise, the wind was blowing, the lightning was flashing, and I wasn't always peaceful in that moment. It seems increasingly difficult at times to touch that sense of peace inside. And I think that's often because we forget or don't really understand our nature. In this world today, I think we divide things up into a lot of pieces. As a former educator, we would kind of put kids in little boxes, or we'd educate in pieces and in part, compartmentalizing, specializing in certain areas. When health means whole, wholeness, and it is seeing ourselves as a whole being, whole and complete. That's what healing requires, is for us to feel that sense of wholeness that is within us. instead of living by compartments and by departments. Now, Jesus said, "Follow me." And that's a great call. And I'm sure every one of us would seek to answer that call. But to follow Jesus requires an ordered, disciplined mind and constructive emotional nature, all expressing through this instrument we call our physical bodies. I think peace is that state which enables us to do the things that we need to do without fear, without hesitation. That peace within that's so important is harmony. It's complete. It's perfect. Our realization of it at any time seems to be only partial. But the peace of God in the soul of man is complete. As our awareness grows, it seems to expand in us. And it is for us to become more and more aware of that peace that is already there. Many years ago, I remember standing, I stood up here at that time also, and suggested a 5-minute piece. And that just simply means wherever you are, when you start to feel tense, when you start to be upset by what's going on around you or what seems to be before you, just stand still. It doesn't have to be 5 minutes, but for a minute, for 2 minutes. In the line in the grocery store, while you're sitting under a dryer in the beauty salon. You could even do it when the commercial's on. And take that moment to touch that calm center of peace that's within you. We talk about from center to circumference. We get so busy in the circumference, we forget the center. The center of you is a calm, still, quiet place, a place of peace. Just like the center of a wheel is a point that does not turn. Everything revolves around one point, and it is still. Sometimes it's difficult to find that stillness, to come to that place of inner peace, to that consciousness of the peace of God in the heart, the soul of each one of us. Now, I'm going to suggest that there are possibly 4 ways of finding that healing through peace. One of those is to have a balanced budget of emotions. You know, emotions going out, feelings, emotions coming in, an inflow and outflow. And we can kind of stabilize our emotional nature by referring to that divine presence within us. How many times when you've been in traffic, you've been there a time or two, and your new best friend just cut you off. Did you stop for a moment and acknowledge the peace of God in that moment? Or when you've been standing in line at some business to be helped and somebody just kind of jumps right in front of you, do we take a moment and realize nothing can disturb the calm peace of my soul? There's an old story of a guru in the East, sitting by the side of the road. And a young person came up and he started asking all these questions about the spiritual life. "Excuse me, son, I'm meditating." Questions continued, and the voice never stopped. Now, the guru had been holding a bouquet of flowers that he had in his hand. And eventually, after the questioning continued and continued, so intense was he in that calm peace of his soul that he jumped up, whacked the kid over the head several times with the flowers and said, "No thing and no one can disturb the calm peace of my soul." Have you been there? I'm going to admit to you, I have been there. I didn't whack anybody with a bouquet of flowers, but I probably wanted to. Turning to that divine presence, taking a moment to remind yourself that there's a higher level of you. There's a deeper level. There's a place you can turn to that kind of minimizes our compulsive behaviors, that helps us avoid congestion and depletion. That in that center, that calm, peaceful center, a way to express ourselves is always open, and to refill ourselves with the calm peace is always there. I think a second way is by focusing our attention on the presence of God first. It's a passage from the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 6, verse 33. "But seek first the kingdom, his kingdom, and his righteousness, and all these things shall be yours as well." Now there's one word in that sentence that I tend to forget. Do you forget the same one? You know which one it is? First. First. When all else fails, seek his kingdom is kind of the way it works for me sometimes. But Jesus said, seek first his kingdom. And that's that realm of peace and all ideas where you touch all power in the center of your being. Things look different when you're standing at that still point. And you're connected to all the power for good. Oh, seek first. And so many of us, we do and we do and we do until that fails. And then it must be time to pray. When you seek that kingdom first, turning to the Father first, the source of ideas, you receive the help you need, the guidance you need, and you find that peace that you're seeking. To many of us, that word peace kind of implies first you have a war, then you make peace. But there's a quotation I like from Colossians. And in this verse, it's first chapter, the 18th verse. He is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. He is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning. That's that divinity that's within you. We call it Christ. You may call it I am, that divine presence. It's first. firstborn from the dead. When are we dead? When we are not aware. When the awareness of that divinity within us is born, we come to life, real life. And that he might be preeminent, meaning before all, we remember that Christ lives and moves and has its being in us. I think that's a wonderful thing to hold on the tip of your tongue. Lives and moves and has its being in me. Let that be our first thought, not our last thought. The first place we look, and not the place we look after we've exhausted every other possible way. It is by touching that center, much like the woman with the issue of blood, when she touched the hem of his garment. That represents us, and that represents our feeling nature, making contact with that divinity in the center of our being. And what happened then? Energy flowed, power moved, and it flows through us when we do that. And that power can be amazing, an amazing peace, an amazing sense of purpose and meaning, an amazing sense of doing exactly what you need to do in the moment. Healing doesn't come by focusing on a need for healing. Healing comes by focusing on the presence of healing. God as a mighty healing presence right here, right now, right where you are. I've said many times, right where you are, all the love, all the power, all the substance, all the intelligence of God, all the life and health of God are right here, right now. Healing comes from that state of awareness, knowing that health exists for you right now. I have a quotation on the back of your bulletin from one of my favorite teachers. Maybe she's yours too, Emily Cady. When I forget what an outstanding metaphysician this woman was, then something happens and I go back and I look at one of her books. And I realize that once again, Emily Cady has come into my home and rewritten a chapter. Because I see things and wisdom and truth that I never saw before. She said in Lessons in Truth, and the page depends on what issue you have, 8 and 9, 108, 109, 112, 113, depends on the particular printing. If you are faithfully and earnestly living what truth you know, and still find that your power to heal is not so great as it was at first, recognize it as all good. Do you think that would be your first thought? Oh, well, this is all good. She says, recognize it as all good. Be assured, no matter what anyone else says to you or thinks, that the seeming failure does not mean loss of power. It means that you are to let go of the lesser in order that you may grasp the whole in which the lesser is included. Do not fear for a moment to let go of just this one little branch of divine power. Choose rather to have the highest thoughts of infinite mind. Let them be what they may, fulfilled through you. We need to take our eyes off the ends of the branches, the results, and keep them centered in the vine. Oh. How often? We keep looking for the results. And when we're looking for the results, what are we thinking? Did healing happen yet? Did it work? Does that sound like a consciousness that knows healing is here and health is now? Or does it sound like, wow, I wonder if this stuff works? Or when it's going to work? Or if I found the right words to make it work? You don't make healing happen. You don't make healing work. You let. And the first step is that sense of peace, poised. Poised in the consciousness of the presence of God as life and health and wholeness. And from that point, the healing flows. Through you, healing you. Sometimes healing comes by creative tension. In this world, we seem to run into a bunch of opposites. And sometimes we want to say, oh, that's good and that's evil. That's good, that's bad. We want to get rid of one of those opposites. Well, I think you might find it a good thing. You can go home and have one side of your electric circuits all disconnected. What do you think of that? We'll take one of those wires out. Will that work for you? You have a positive and a negative. Well, let's take the negative out. It sounds like it's bad. What happens? It's polarity, and it has to have both sides to flow. Business. In business, there's a thing called competition, and that's good. That keeps people on their toes. That makes service better. If I have no competition and I've got a grocery store, what do I care about serving people? It's the only place you've got to go, honey. So you're going to shop here no matter what. It keeps prices low. It makes for better business. That's a good thing. Now we see good and bad. Life and that other thing. Abundance and lack. Not everything needs to be divided. Wealth and service. Receiving, giving. They can work together. They can balance. What we need is to touch that calm peace at the center of our being and allow the Christ mind to teach us correct proportions, to help us choose the relative importance of things and the right relationship of things. One thing to another. I think one of the other last ways that healing happens through peace is through that unending, unhesitating movement of God toward expression. Now, peace isn't a do-nothing quality. It is not that picture of the pastoral scene where there's no motion. Nothing seems to be happening. Everything's stock still. Oh, it may look pretty. But peace is also dynamic. And it can be a dynamo of active ingredients, ceaselessly working to form a new opening, a new way, to offer fresh opportunities, new possibilities, to allow you to flow into a more prosperous, healthy, happy, fulfilling life. Within you is a radiant center of divine mind energy, working always toward healing of mind, body, and circumstances, affairs. Our part is to become receptive. How about we practice absorbing peace? You don't make it, it already is. but you can soak it up. I'm sure some of you have used those old string mops. Remember those? We used to have a couple here that had those really long strings. And sometimes I had to use it, and I'd pull out the mop bucket and the string mop. And of course, it had been drying in the closet for a while, and I'd take it out, and the strings are stiff. And you put it down in the wet floor and push it around a little bit. Doesn't seem to be doing much until it starts to suck up some water. First, I want to say, well, it's not working very well. And then, after a while, once it's gotten itself lubricated, wet a little bit, it starts drawing a lot of water till you have to wring it out because it's so full. Well, how about us becoming saturated with the peace of God? How about us becoming still? And that's not a stillness that's like sleep or death, but a stillness that's as if we're poised for something new and good and wonderful. So comes healing. Something new and good and wonderful. Wholeness. And as we open our minds to it, we remember, seek ye first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. We open our minds to that presence and power of God within us and to the idea of health and wholeness. And then there's one of my favorite passages from the 3rd chapter of Malachi. I'm sure this is where you go when you've had a stressful day or you want an answer. You run right to Malachi. Go to the 3rd chapter, the 10th verse, and you find, "Thereby put me to the test, says the Lord of hosts, if I will not open the windows of heaven for you and pour down for you an overflowing blessing." What do you want? Would you like some peace in your life? Some sense of fulfillment? Sense of well-being, health, and wholeness? Put God to the test. And to put God to the test is not to say, okay, God, make it happen, or I'm going to believe you don't exist. First, you have to put yourself on the line and surrender to the power. Let yourself go and say, okay, Lord, here I am. Charles Fillmore, in his early time of spiritual growth and understanding, growing in understanding, he decided that if there was anything to this truth, to a higher power, that he could communicate with it. And he began daily practicing, sitting in the silence, touching that stillness, opening to that calm peace in his soul. And he found that ideas, even images, began to come to him. A change of mind, a change of life, a change of health and wholeness. Fuller, greater, and better. Put God to the test. But to put God to the test, you have to go to God within yourself and say, here I am, Lord. I am open, receptive, and responsive to your peace, your love, your life, and your health.